We're talking also about the agenda with daylight savings time. Daylight savings agenda. Let's talk about daylight savings time. Have you ever been in a situation where daylight savings time happens and you feel worn down from it? Now, I know if many of you guys know medical meme information going back, I've talked about it first in the health realm. It wasn't considered a health issue. So Info brought daylight savings to town as far as in the chronically ill and health department and health issues. Other than that, it wasn't talked about except for other reasons like the economy. So why was daylight savings put together? One of the biggest reasons was economics, economy. It was to benefit the economy, the bottom line, the dollar. And that's why daylight savings came to town. But is that the real reason? Because remember this, there's always some sinister, evil plot behind a lot of the big mainstream things going on. Now, I'm not saying everything mainstream has an evil plot behind it, but believe me, most everything in mainstream does have an evil plot. And there are things in the alternative stream that have evil plots too along with it. But this one here, daylight savings, is on another level of evil. One of the reasons why they do daylight savings is to make your life miserable. Yes. Now, the powers that be on this planet, the illumination on this planet, they think every way possible. They think in any way possible, how can they make human life on this planet more difficult, a bigger struggle, much more of a hard time, obstacles, pitfalls, traps, tiger snares. And so one of those is, let's change the time around. Let's do that on people. We'll have them running on the hamster wheel. We'll have them tripping over themselves. You might think, well, how does it really hurt us? You know, when the time change comes, everything should be fine. I'm okay, just a little extra tired when the time change comes. But it's more than that. It throws off people who are sensitive. It throws off people who are struggling and sick. It throws off people mentally, emotionally. It's a trigger for people who have bipolar, a trigger for people who have depression, anxiety, OCD. OCD is a big one right there. One thing that people don't understand is when daylight savings occurs, when they change the clock, where they turn it back or forward, OCD and many people, most people, they struggle. They may not even attribute it to that time change, but it can throw people with OCD into a major tailspin, one that can set them back for months until the time gets changed again. And then after they've somehow stabilized with their OCD, even though they're struggling and other things may trigger them, comes along the time change again, and then somebody with OCD, boom, they're now triggered again, and they're on that hamster wheel of OCD hell because of the time change. Now you may think, well, hey, why would the Illumination be thinking about things like this? They do. Massive think tanks with massive money behind it, and evildoers that do sit around and make charts and PowerPoints on this very stuff because they think about the things that make our lives worse and more miserable. Like, for instance, baby formula. Baby formula with GMO corn oil, GMO soy in it, the worst ingredients you've ever seen in it. Baby formula. You would think the world would know by now that they can make a better, healthier baby formula for moms that can't breastfeed. But no, they won't, and they won't go there. Instead, the baby formula will be the worst crap there is. There's a reason for that. This is what they want. Same thing with daylight savings. And I could make a list of this stuff going all the way back for years about the things that they actually purposely make the way they do so that it causes more trouble or harm or difficulties. So daylight savings. So why should that bother anybody overall? If you have some type of emotional struggles, whatever it is, or you got some type of condition, a mental condition you're suffering and struggling from, anxiety, depression, sadness, Depersonalization, that's a big one. It throws off the neurons. It actually sends neurons in a tailspin. So the first thing that happens when the time changes forcibly is neurons start to heat up. When they heat up, metals start to cook, they start to oxidize faster, they start to move around. And what happens is our brain is challenged. So every time there's a time change, our brain becomes challenged. Now, do you think indigenous cultures, going all the way back, do you think the Native Americans, you think they had a time change going on? You think so? So when November 1st came along in a Native American village, make sure you tell everybody across North America, everybody, that we're going to change the time. We're going to do that. It just doesn't happen. It never did. But we do it here because as the centuries have gone by and time has gone by, certain powers that be govern the planet. And we know that. You know that. If you still don't know that, then that's a nice bubble you're in. I'd like to climb into that bubble with you and be like, yeah, the world is perfect. Nothing's going on. This bubble's amazing. Give me this bubble you're in. I would love that bubble. But it's not really truly reality of what's happening. And daylight savings is a prime example of how the world works, of how the hierarchy works. So when it comes down to daylight savings time, when it comes down to spring ahead, fall back, and everything else that they've termed it and coined it, it disturbs balance. So it's geared and created just to disturb the balance of life. Now, canary in the coal mine, I want to go into that a little bit. So what's a canary in a coal mine? So you got a canary, nice yellow canary right here, and it's in a cage, in a mine, carved deep into the rock, tunnel deep into the rock, right? When the air and the oxygen starts to diminish, the canary sings a different tune. And the miners hear it. They hear a canary struggling. So the point is you don't want to wait until the canary dies and falls to the bottom of the cage. You want to hear the canary sing a different tune. You want to hear the canary say something different. So when the miners were working, it wasn't just about checking the bird in the box or checking the bird in the cage. Oh, it's still alive. We're okay. Let's keep on mining. Right? The bird's okay in the cage. They would pay detailed attention to the canary because they didn't have oxygen meters back then. They couldn't be like, whoa, the oxygen in this cave we just dug is actually diminishing. It's at 15% oxygen. Now it's at 14% oxygen. Now it's on 12% oxygen. Now we're down at 8% oxygen and we're struggling. They didn't have the meters. So they used the canary. And when the canary would actually sing a different tune, it's the sound, the voice of the canary, the chirp would alter. And that's the first thing you looked for. So what's happening? The last thing you wanted is to just get down into that hole and look into that cage and see a canary dead and then realize you can't breathe and you can't make it back. Daylight savings time is like sucking the oxygen out of human life. Ever so gently, ever so small, ever so subtle, but that's what it does. When you're 90 years old, if you've been blessed to make it to 90, and you're in a nursing home, well, that time change can determine life or death. That time change can get a worker who's taking care of a 90-year-old in a nursing home off their game. That time change can get a conductor of a train with a bunch of passengers in it off their game. That time change can get a pilot in the sky in a plane off their game. It can change the way we feel, the way we think, can make us more forgetful in the moment, can make us more apprehensive, can make us less discerning, can make us too discerning, can throw off our judgment calls. And so every time changes, and they don't measure this because they don't want to measure this. Science doesn't want to look at this. Every time the time changes, a bunch of shit happens on this planet. A bunch of accidents happen. A bunch of moms driving their kids to school crash. Yeah, all in different states and different cities and different towns because they're off their game. Maybe a mom didn't get their caffeine and they're all groggy headed because they're just sick every day. Maybe a mom got too much caffeine. Maybe whatever it is. Or maybe a dad on a construction job because rushing to work because the time change. Maybe somebody else. Maybe somebody who was drunk all night, all jacked up. They're usually used to getting home at 4 a.m. They time their alcohol consumption as they leave the party or the bar or the club. And that time change throws something off, and now, boom, they're crashed with somebody else. They shouldn't have been driving drunk, but either way, they had their system down while they were driving drunk, and now their system's thrown off. It's these subtleties I'm just talking about, all these different subtleties. You're not measuring it. Science isn't measuring it. No one's measuring it. But when it happens, the illumination powers that be are measuring it. They know what's happening, and they know a shitstorm occurs every time the time changes. They know it because people are off their game. And they know the people that are the most sensitive feel it the worst, like the canary. And when we're talking about the chronically ill, when we're talking about sick people, we're talking about canaries. People who, they're sensitive. They can't be that indestructible 22-year-old that hasn't really had a health challenge yet, that's working out every day and doing this and doing that, and drinking what they want, eating what they want, running here, going here, and then surfing here. They can't be like that right now in their life. They're not at that state. They're at a place where they got tics and tremors and vibrations through the body and sleep problems and sleep apnea, insomnia, all kinds of different mental issues too, depression, anxiety, OCD, bipolar, whatever, all the different things they got going on. And then you get old people that are older, elders, time change knocks them hard. It knocks grandpa and grandma and great-grandma and great-grandpa hard. And the powers that be, the hierarchy knows this and understands this, completely understands this, because that's the whole nature of the deception, and that's part of the evil. Now, it's not the greatest evil in the world. It's not the biggest evil in the world, but let me tell you, it changes. When that time changes, then everything on the planet changes, and shit happens, and calamity occurs. Happenstance happens everywhere. Everywhere. Happenstance happens here. Happenstance happens there. Happenstance happens there. And shit goes wrong. All around wherever they've done that time switch on people. It throws them off. People who can't see good and can't drive at night end up driving in the dark now. When they never drove in the dark at that time of day. When that time changes and now they're driving in the dark for the first time at that time of day when they never did before, calamity happens. They're in an accident on a highway and somebody else gets killed. This is the stuff they revel in and love. They love this destruction. They love injuries. They love hardship. They love sickness. And the thing is, the time change, it worsens chronic illness. It worsens all the canaries and chronic illness. It starts to break them down a little bit, and then you got to recover and recoup. And then the next one comes. You got to recover and recoup. And it's not like daylight savings, the wizard of daylight savings in the sky isn't saying, make sure you drink extra celery juice. Make sure you do your HMDS. Make sure you take care of yourself. Make sure you do your spinach soup. Make sure you do your aloe vera. They're not telling you to do that. Make sure you do your zinc. Make sure you do more B12 to overcompensate for the daylight savings time. It's not like this big pie in the sky, an eye in the sky, big brother and so forth up there isn't telling you should probably be on more B12 when we change the time on you and mess you up. But they don't, because nobody cares. It's a term I know very well. Nobody cares. That's how it works in this world. Death by 1,000 cuts is something they love to do too. It's all packaged in the same thing, you know? What's crazy is here we are. You think that people are looking out for the chronically ill. You think that's happening now. After all the work I've done for 35 years, all the work I'm sure a lot of other people have done, helping people with chronic illness, you think that the message would be out there, but no. People with chronic illness still get told they're crazy, still get told they're lazy, still get told there's nothing wrong with them. It's all in their head, that they're make-believing their symptoms, conditions, and their diagnoses. They're still being told all this stuff. And then on top of it, there's all the sand being thrown at everybody's face. There's all these monkey wrenches being thrown in everybody's wheel. And that's how it's done on this planet. But the daylight savings is hierarchies, kind of like April Fool's Day on everybody. That's how it works. It's there for a reason, in hopes that the numbers rise. Every time they switch that time, fatalities rise. Yeah, that's right. And with every fatality, there's a gain for illumination. With every sick person, there's a gain. With every person that gets sicker and sicker and a problem happens, there's a gain and a reliance on the system and a reliance on the medical system. That's how it's built. And daylight savings time is all about helping to break the medical system. And when you help to break the medical system, things just start falling apart everywhere and all around. And that's part of what the illumination does. And that's part of daylight savings time.